Good evening, everyone. First, like the last speaker, I have to apologise for not wearing something red. It seems I don't own a single piece of clothing that's red, despite the fact that I read researchers say that it makes you more sexually attractive and socially desirable. So maybe I should reconsider my wardrobe a little bit in light of that. I've been asked to say a few words about the challenges of communicating effectively the issue of biodiversity in the media. As a journalist who's covered environmental issues for many years, I'm convinced of the importance of biodiversity as the basis for supporting our societies, our economies, and life on Earth itself. But I'm also only too aware of the challenge and difficulty of selling stories on biodiversity to busy news editors who are often only interested in what happened yesterday, what happened today, or at a stretch, what might happen tomorrow. When you talk about what might happen in 10 years or 20 years, they often glaze over. I think the problem's partly one of language. Let's be brutally honest, the word biodiversity is about as interesting as quantitative easing to many people, and lots of us, including my own bureau chief, who's quite an intelligent man at the best of times, don't even know what biodiversity means. I think we have to try and keep our language as direct and as relevant to everyday people as we can when trying to communicate the issue. As the previous speaker said, I think most people do care deeply about biodiversity, and as children we're often enchanted by tigers or elephants or sharks or horses or snakes. I grew up in the south of England where there weren't many wild elephants roaming the plains, but I was fascinated by birds, seabirds, owls, curlews and other things, and that love of nature I had as a child, going off and watching birds and walking in woods, that's fed through into my adult life and my belief that nature needs protecting. And I think that's equally true of most people that you speak to. I don't think it's gone wrong, as you said, for the vast majority of people. I think they still remain enchanted by nature. I think as communicators, we have to try and keep that wonder alive in the way we go about our communication. I mean, when you were presenting the findings of the Red List, I think these percentages of freshwater mollusks, whilst very important, I certainly would have benefited from a couple of examples of freshwater mollusks. I just think of someone who's dropped a moule in a puddle. You know, I need something to grasp onto to make it relevant to me. Reuters, one example, we never tire of telling people when we talk about endangered bluefin tuna, we never tire of telling people that they can accelerate faster than a Ferrari and grow as heavy as small horses. It's just one example that the way in which we try and keep these issues focused on the human level and keep them relevant to the man in the street. Rather than talk about the risk of an 80% drop in biodiversity, which I must admit I did myself in a recent story, we should be talking more about the risk of being surrounded by dead seas and oceans empty of fish and other life, or of walking in silent forests devoid of birdsong, or of looking out over empty plains where there are no plants or animals to be seen. For most organisations, including Reuters, news is a business. So, in order to move stories on biodiversity away from the features pages or the science pages, I think it often requires a very clear demonstration of either the financial cost of inaction or indeed the financial benefits of action, which I think chimes a bit more closely with your call this evening. Also, businesses and corporations inhabit and often exploit the ecosystems in which they find themselves, and by connecting these stories to businesses and corporations, I think is another way of helping generate a wider audience for these types of stories. Initiatives such as the Red List are indeed, I can say from a personal point of view, very valuable tools for journalists, because they help to bring our stories to life. They help to give them a relevance and a practical angle. That story I wrote about an 80% drop in biodiversity, actually in Brazil I think it was made far more interesting thanks to a quick look at the Red List, when I was then able to identify some of the species at risk of extinction, which included the giant anteater in South America. And did you know that the giant anteater's tongue can reach over 1/2 meter in order to catch its prey? I think it's interesting, and I hope you'll agree. So, thanks very much.